voice and calling, as watchman, property custodian, historian, and faithful servant of God. This will be firm, sober, masculine in tone, and record-ready, without naming individuals, but with unmistakable truth. I've read Bride Tidings International, USA, Part 9. The watchman, the custodian, and the weight of faithfulness, open quote. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. 1 Corinthians 4:2, close quote. Introduction. A call that did not seek a title. This part of the history is not written to elevate a man. It is written to preserve truth. Bride Tidings International in the United States did not continue because of organizational strength, finances, or popularity. It continued because God required a watchman, someone who would not abandon the post when pressure came, and a custodian, someone who would guard what was entrusted even when misunderstood, opposed, or persecuted. I did not ask to be these things. I was placed in them. The watchman's position. A watchman does not stand where it is safe. He stands where he can see danger first. From the early years of Bride Tidings in the United States, the warning signs were visible. Doctrine slowly shifting from preparation to personality. Stewardship being replaced by proper authority fused leadership. The respected but resisted in practice. The watchman sees these things before collapse, not after. Silence would be obedient. The steward not. Bride Tidings, like all trust, was never meant to belong to an individual. It belonged to the congregation, the mission, and ultimately to God. Custodianship is not power, it is burden. As a property custodian, I stood in the gap to protect what earlier servants built with sacrifice, to prevent unlawful transfer through manipulation or intimidation, to testify that the house of God is not merchandise. When a custodian refuses to surrender trust to corruption, pressure follows. Accusations follow. Legal threats follow, but faithfulness requires standing, even when standing costs everything. The historian's responsibility. Memory is a form of warfare. History is dangerous to those who rewrite it. As historian, I carry first-hand knowledge of how Bride Tidings was planted in the United States, of the doctrinal emphasis given by Dr. Rene Ramientos, of the sacrifices made before recognition ever came, of the deviation that followed when fear of God diminished. Forgetting history is how ministries are stolen without resistance. Remembering history is how truth survives generations. Bride Tidings did not begin as a platform, it began as a warning and a preparation. Faithfulness under trial. The mark of true servants. The measure of a servant is not how he stands in favor, but how he stands when rejected. I remained, when it would have been easier to walk away, when injustice was disguised as authority, when truth was labeled rebellion, when stewardship was mistaken for defiance. I did not remain for property, I remained for testimony. A watchman who abandons his post loses his voice. A custodian who surrenders trust loses his authority. A historian who alters facts loses his soul. The American responsibility in the Bride message. What has weakened in other regions, God has chosen to preserve through faithfulness in America. Not through crowds, not through branding, but through obedient suffering. Bride Tidings International USA now carries a sacred role to preserve the unaltered bride doctrine, to document the true history, to train servants, not celebrities, to prepare a people, not a movement. This continuation is not rebellion against the past, it is loyalty to it. Conclusion. The watchman still stands. I write this as a servant who expects no applause. I stand as a watchman who blew the trumpet, a custodian who guarded the trust, a historian who refused to forget, a servant who chose faithfulness over favor. Bride Tidings International in the USA remains alive because God preserves his truth through those willing to suffer for it. And until the bride says, "Come again with purity," the watchman does not leave his post. If you want next, Ephron, I can prepare part 10, legal, spiritual, and apostolic restoration phase. Format parts 1 and 9 into a single official historical manuscript. Turn part 9 into a spoken declaration or sermon transcript. Translate this into Tagalog for Filipino ministers and elders. Just direct me.
Proceed. On all the above you suggested, Sister Gabriela, we are in the right path. Amen and amen.